Yes! Oh my god. It's 11:30. We did it. We did it. It took us some time, but we did it. All right, let's talk about the ups and downs of Stellar Blade, shall we? The positives and negatives. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. So, oof. Man, this game has been a roller coaster ride. I did not expect to be playing this for almost a full week. It took a lot more, based on the how long to beat time. I did not think we were going to be playing as long as we were, but this is not an easy game. All right, let's talk about it. This is my general takeaway from this game. When I started out, and I was all the way through, about halfway through, my sentiment about this game was that there is nothing bad about it. Everything is good, but nothing about it is really exceptional. Except for the graphics. The graphics were amazing. But outside of that, like the combat, the story, the boss fights, the traversal, the level design, everything about it was A tier, but none of it was God tier. So it was a great game, but not like a transcendent game, because there wasn't anything about it that really stood out. About halfway to 2/3 of the way through the game, I'd say about halfway through the game, that changed in two ways. Number one, there was more platforming and ledge traversal in the levels, more complicated and complex ledge traversal and platforming that I actually didn't like, because the platforming in this game isn't very precise and it's a little janky. So that wasn't a problem at first, because there wasn't a lot of platforming challenges, but later on in the game there were an inordinate amount, and I was getting really annoyed with some of the level design, the platforming, and the ledge traversal, because I just didn't like it very much, and it was suddenly focusing on it a lot more. So that was bad, I thought. But on the other hand, another thing that changed about halfway through was the boss fights suddenly became way harder, way more complex, and way more satisfying when you beat them finally. The bosses in the first half of the game are pretty much a breeze. They're nothing to write home about, really. And then about halfway through, they really start hitting a lot harder and taking a lot longer to die. And their movesets get a lot more complex. The parries and dodges get a lot harder to perform. The extra like blink moves and all those little extra combo moves and stuff that you have to do in response to an enemy's attack, the windows for those got tighter and tighter, and it was a lot sweatier. The third thing, which kind of complements the boss fights, I mean, the boss fights in this game are some of the best of the year. I would say maybe the best of the year if it weren't for Black Myth Wukong. And I think actually it gives it a run for its money, to be honest with you. The other thing, and this kind of complements the boss fights, is that the combat in the game, while fairly complex, isn't that I didn't think it was that exceptional, because it was pretty all very standard stuff. You get some skills with some cooldowns, you get some combos, you get some parries, you get some dodges, you get some responses to those counters, things like that. And that's all well and good. But again, about halfway through the game, you start compiling more and more things that you can do in your fight. You've got beta energy, you've got burst energy, you've got tacky energy, you've got more your skill, you've got additional skill trees, to the point that it's by the 3/4 of the game it's incredibly complex, but they do an incredible job of keeping it all straightforward enough that it's not overwhelming. It was still like I knew what I was doing. I didn't feel like, well, there's just like 15 different combo moves, I don't know what I'm doing. There were some fringes of it that I kind of felt that way, but it wasn't enough that I didn't feel like I had a handle on it. There are some games sometimes that will just throw so much stuff at you, and some of it's worth using and some of it's not, that it's like, ugh, why even bother? I'm just going to use my regular attack. This wasn't like that at all. The additional attacks in this game are critical to use. You have to learn how to use them. But there were so much that I couldn't specialize in all of them. I had to ignore large swaths of some of the attacks, and just have one attack for my beta energy, just have one attack for my burst energy, because I didn't have just playing the main story, I didn't have enough skill points to go around. So there were just certain moves. I had to choose what I was going to specialize in. I actually liked that. because it gave me a full book of options, and I chose the ones that worked the best for me, and eventually I got through the game that way. But there's a lot of different ways it seems like you could play this game, and so the combat gives you a lot of variety and opportunity for customization that I don't usually see in games like this. You're not going to get something like that in Bayonetta, you know. Not that that's not an awesome game. It's got other things about it that are exceptional, but like in a game like that, you're just not going to see a lot of complexity like that. There are some exceptions, like the newer God of War games are definitely an exception, but this had some of that where it was like there was so much going on that, and you had to learn it because it was all very important. If you're just neglecting your burst energy in this game, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I mean, but there were some things that I completely neglected. I didn't use any offensive consumables. I didn't use most of my beta attacks. I chose one that I really liked, and I put all my points into that, you know. But yeah, the combat variety is insane in this game. So, and takeaway is, yeah, there were some things, especially later in the game, that really bugged me. I really hated some of the ledge traversal and platforming, especially toward the end. It wasn't fun for me. I didn't think it was very good. I don't think the platforming in this game is precise enough to be really fun. So I regretted that they put so much focus on that in the later levels. And you know, as far as the story goes, it's one of those stories that's like super crazy. And I did think it was satisfying. So I thought that the story was interesting. I had a handle on what was going on, even though I wasn't reading lore or any of that stuff. I had a basic idea of the broad strokes. I did guess the twist at the end. I won't say what it is, but I guessed what it was an hour into the game. I mean, so I saw that coming, and that was regrettable. But outside of that, I thought the story was good. I thought it was interesting. I thought there were some very interesting philosophical standpoints in it. Like, for instance, just this doesn't really give anything away in the game, but I thought it was really cool that part of the lore of this game, you know what? I'm not going to say it because it could possibly be perceived as a spoiler. Let's just say this. There were some interesting things about the history of this game and the lore when it comes to human evolution and human survival when dealing with things like global warming that I've never really seen put forward in that way. And I was thinking, that's actually a really interesting idea. I've never really thought about it that way. I thought that was really cool. So as far as like the moment to moment story and like the twists and turns of that, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great, but the lore of the game, the way that the history comes together and you start to learn about what this world is really about and where everything comes from, I did think that was really cool. Outside of that, you know, I didn't. The game's 6 months old now, so whatever bugs, if there were any bugs at launch, those have been patched out. I didn't really see any of those. You know, like I said, the game looked great. The graphics were very good. The sound design was very good. That music is excellent. All that stuff was really great. And Booba, there was lots of grade A Booba. so that was nice, I guess. But yeah, ultimately, excellent game, I would say. The thing I'm going to remember about this game is the boss fights. The boss fights are some of the best ever outside of a FromSoft game, I would say. Some of the best boss fights ever. Some of those later ones, I mean, they killed me 60, 70 times, some of them. I think maybe more than that, a couple of them. Hard. I really struggled toward the end of this game, but we got through it, and I loved those later boss fights, man. They were great. All right, last couple orders of business here before we move on. We'll go ahead and turn the music back up. The bottom center of the screen says that we have beaten 88 games in 2024 and 535 since we started doing this in 2020. Those numbers are lying to you. We've now beaten 89 games in 2024 and 536 since we started doing this. Let's go. I haven't changed those numbers in a long time. The last game I beat was like 10 days ago or more. God bless. That's the longest I've gone without beating a game in a long time. All right, last little thing here. Let's go ahead and you know what? It's not going to let us skip, so let's, if there's a post-credit scene, I'll look it up later. Stellar Blade, it has been a blast, but we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye, thank you, you were awesome.